I need to fix this chair. It's starting to do this sound again. But today I want to talk about something that I realized that I had an imbalance in. More precisely so, 25% imbalance. What I mean by that is that I will get to that in more depth, but to begin with, I just say that to me, a very useful way of seeing balance is through the four elements, which pretty much conclude all of what it is to be a human being, except for, sometimes we add the fifth element, but beginning with the four elements, they are earth, air, water, and fire. And that is commonly thought of as most in Eastern traditions, but also American Indian, Native American spiritual communities and history. Whereas earth represents the physical, and air represents the mental, emotions is water, and fire, that is debatable a little bit, but I like to see it as spirit or will power, or the ability to visualize and, the willpower to see something beyond the physical, emotional, and mental. But still, the spiritual, sometimes some people see as the fifth element, because it is really, spirituality is really in everything and the foundation of everything and within everything, For those who call that God, I heard a quote from the Bible where some gods say that chop a wood and I will be there, lift a stone and I will be there, meaning that it's everywhere. But anyways, my imbalance that I will talk about today is that I have just realized this thing about responsibility as a key when it comes to just 3 out of 4 of the base elements. And one I've left out is fire a little bit and spirit. Debatable, I've left out the fifth element. But anyways, we need full balance to have balance, If 3 out of 4 is not balanced and 4 out of 5 is not either balanced. So as we grow up, me and most people, we are taught that they got this. The authorities, society, the state, any authority that is much wiser than us should be. They know what's going on, and the only thing we should do is just listen to them, continue with that, and we will end up well. But looking through the 4 elements of being human, I can look back on that this has fallen flat when it comes to health in physical, where, I will get to that, but I will just go over that. I have clearly noticed it in my life for the 3 that I told you about, that I have aligned a little bit in the physical and the mental and emotional in this angle of seeing things. So just to set up me beginning to explain that, I will just say that equally, all of these 4 elements of health and wellness, they can be destructed into the most easily understood when it comes to the physical. We know that our bodies need exercise, regular exercise, and rest, sleep, and thirdly, nutrition. That is good. So if we begin with the physical, then the earth element, my example will start a little weak here because right here, the regular exercise thing, nowadays society has this recommended for us that they have caught up on that we need regular exercise and also we need sleep and that stuff. But that is oftentimes very hard how our society is structured, by the way, with many people have sitting jobs and monotonous movements, and the amount of hours we need to work, they're making it pretty hard to rest and that stuff. So, but sure, it is not as bad as the coming examples that I will have for things that could go very wrong if we just follow common advice and the majority's advice and societies oftentimes. But so on the third point of nutrition, now it's starting to get a little bit weird. Sure, if you just follow the recommendations, you will end up, I won't say it's a catastrophe, but you will end up like everyone else, which is the definition of mediocrity, which, I mean, each to their own, but what that means is that you can just pick a random person in the mass and you will see your own health in that person in your future. Like, what are the odds of not getting cancer and cardiovascular disease and even becoming addicted to medicine because they cause all kinds of side effects that you need to take another medicine for, and many people nowadays get into these sort of elderly care systems where they are even more medicated and pretty quickly stop being able to, or lose their frequency of being outside and having regular movement and connection. And I'm not saying this is all over the place, but it's pretty common, at least in Sweden, that we just phase the elderly out like this, and really have built the system around this, and this is accepted as normal. The elderly just become sick sooner or later. But when we look at people who take their own responsibility and look into health and really start to do their own digging, they will find things that are really contradictory to common advice many times. And I'm not going to go into the house and that stuff, what I believe in this video. I'm just going on about a bigger pattern here that I'm seeing and an insight in the end. But yeah, these people who do that digging and find their own way, and inspirations of people who actually live long and healthy, and they don't have to die because of illness. They die because of age, or you don't know, maybe. I mean, there are different ways, just to mention that I'm not one to anymore believe that there is one way of eating and living, but there are certain patterns there as well where things, and most often the most natural things without chemicals and even pharmaceuticals, and just oftentimes it's very natural things going on. Anyways, moving on with, let's go to the psyche, where the subscription, just follow the common advice. I can call that the subscription fallacy in the psyche. And on the point of training, because we are doing the formula of training or exercise, rest, and nutrition. So eat, sleep, train, On the train side, we as a society, or most societies, promote education, formal education, which is, it's going to lead you to the majorities, the average of knowledge. You won't stick out. But as we see now, it recently also came on the news in Sweden, where a lot of academics here are unemployed now because they have educated for years towards things that actually are not needed anymore, or maybe wasn't ever needed when it comes down to it. And I'm not here to bash the entirety of education, but there is so much to say about education and problems with them, and that's sort of formal education, whereas you just are told what you need to be taught in the first place, and then maybe that even this is the only truth many times. Whereas in the healthy, or when you take your own responsibility side of things, this looks still like education, but more like regular learning. A healthy mind, learns until it's, to the end of times, I've heard, listening to mentally healthy people that are older. And really, what I've experienced myself is that it keeps my mind healthy and happy to constantly be growing, expanding, learning through books, people's experiences, people talking. Sure, you can learn on specific educational programs, but anyways, conversations with people. And so go back on the subscription fallacy side of the psyche, where we are on the point of rest now, where, how do we mentally rest? That is often looking like really alcohol on weekends and distractions daily and constantly, just to give ourselves a break, which is needed. And we also look forward to vacations for that type of thing. We can just let go and do what we want. Where in the when you take responsibility yourself to do the digging again, looking up stuff. I mean, to be fair, here also society is catching up and promoting tips that are useful, but really for us maybe to be more efficient workers. But anyways, when we feel stuff like that our thoughts won't stop and we can't focus and we feel foggy or scattered, overstimulated by information, decisions or tasks, there are things to do like taking breaks, regular breaks, having quiet time, reducing multitasking, which by the way, I should make a video sometime on its own about multitasking because I have my opinions on that and what I see now. That it's an increasing thing with all of the podcasting and with all the abilities people have with 2 screens when they game and all that shit. But anyways, yeah, like sleep is helping us with the mental things, to the mental rest. And then on the psyche, where we have the nutrition part. What is nutrition for the mind? I think in my opinion that is sort of play and just having fun, and what the average person is doing for fun is just doing what everyone else is doing. Oftentimes it's watching TV. I guess that is decreasing, but really watching media has not decreased. Just watching funny videos. Yeah, gaming could be one thing. But really what I also noticed when people game, they tend to many times not have fun. It's sort of more as a relaxation and it's not so nurturing because it's many times about competition and fitting in the communities instead of just purely letting go and rejuvenate your mind. So let's move on to the third element of emotions, where that is the water. With the exercising step there, we are taught that for the longest time we've been teaching each other that it's not okay to cry and be sad and that stuff, but now it's tilting towards that it's not okay to be angry. But really we are still in sort of like Teal Swan says, the emotional dark age, where we really have no clue how to exercise emotions, and it's still we are still fighting them a lot and trying to, we label them as good or bad, and the only emotions good are basically the happy emotions of joy and happiness and contentment and all of the nuances to that. So that is what you get if you just subscribe to whatever people are doing to their emotions on the exercise side. But if you take people on the responsibility side, that is sort of looking up on your own. You do your own digging and reading about how to actually identify and whatever you're feeling. What is it that I'm feeling? I'm like, for example, stress isn't a feeling and loneliness isn't a feeling, but they sort of recruit other emotions, and then be able to read the emotions and decode what they mean and what their message is that is very useful for you. Hello, Editing Robin here. I'm just gonna warn you that from now on in the video, the background noise in my surrounding was really increased and it was distractive, so I had to turn up my headphones so I won't hear my own voice further on the recording, and thereby I sort of, what happens when you put on headphones that lock out the surrounding sounds. You sort of strain your voice a bit and almost shout or scream, but you won't hear any decibel differences, but you will hear that my voice in a different pitch, so that's why. Sorry to interrupt. And then when you know what it means and that it's ultimately positive what you feel when you understand it and its message, then you can act accordingly, and life becomes so much better than average. And the average emotional health is not good, I would say. So that can become a practice you do regularly once you understand that it is possible even to work with your water elements in this sense, and it's not just happening to you. And then we have the part of the rest, and there is the emotional rest, where how that look like in average is really also alcohol on the weekends, I guess, but that blends into the nutrition, the emotional nutrition part, because alcohol is sort of making our emotions flow in a way, whereas it never does otherwise, because we constantly suppress it. But with alcohol we release the pressure for a while and lose control, which can feel good, but it really doesn't solve anything emotionally. Then we also emotionally rest by constant distractions, like with the mental air element usually. But I forgot to say also on the mental rest, what can be very useful is meditation also. That is, it's catching up on average to be able to just practice your mind not to think all the time. I mean, or at least learning to see that with practice you are not your thoughts, and therefore won't go around on these trips of non-control and chaos many times. But the same can go with meditation. That is a useful thing, even for emotions, to be able to just be with them, in order to not rush to go away from them as fast as you can. And what happens when we don't understand emotions and when we're not teaching it nobody's doing it really, almost, it means that many times the results are being that you're holding it together for others, or you feel drained by societal interactions, or you're suppressing your real feelings. You feel like you can't be honest or vulnerable, or that you're emotionally overstretched by others' needs, etc. And then you need emotional rest, and you do it, like I said, through just distractions most often. But what you really need is, and what comes with the responsibility where you sort of do the digging and find this out, how you actually solve this is, for example, through safe conversations where you can be real, setting boundaries, letting yourself feel instead of bottling things up, time with people who don't require emotional performance, where you can be emotional honest and not carry everything. And that becomes so much easier once you have the practice done, like physical exercise. That is, you don't just rest, you need to rest after exercise in order to thrive. So the exercise is really important in all of the elements, just as any of these three parts, also with the rest, exercise, rest, and nutrition. So when it comes to nutrition, it is sort of blending in with the rest also, like those things that I said, but I want to include play here as well, where that is often overlooked and it can be very nourishing on all parts of you. But what we usually do to get nutrition emotionally is, like I said, alcohol there, but also seeing other people's emotions on media is really how we sort of feed ourselves with emotions and make us feel stuff, like when we read the papers or scroll an emotional video maybe, or watch a movie, a series. It can be, it is some form of nutrition, just as fast food is some form of nutrition. You will survive, but it is gonna lead you to sort of a mediocre place as well. And if you wanna have the average emotional health, go ahead with that, and don't take your own responsibility going looking for things, different possibilities. And there is always a way to everything. It's something I wrote down yesterday in my journals, by the way, because I just come to that conclusion in hundreds of different ways and noticed it in my experience. That if you just see something, and that is, by the way, a segue to the spirit part of fire, which is sort of being able to see something beyond your emotions, your thoughts and physics, where it's something you just know or want deep down inside. And what I like to say, and it's not I who came up with this, but I like to say it anyways like this, that you don't need a how, you just need a what and a why. Because in my experience, that has been very useful. The hows, they are unfolding when you have the clear intentions and vision of what you want and that stuff. So that's, like I said, leads nicely to the fourth, and this is where I have not understood this clearly, that I need to have responsibility here as well. Because why not? How could it be possible that all of these other elements require me in order to thrive and not just survive like everyone else and have a pretty sad existence? I'm not saying that, well, I am saying that a lot of people have, compared to what is possible, most people have a sad existence. This is probably maybe an unpopular opinion, but I find it true. So, in my case, it has then also been quite sad in all of these elements before I took responsibility and started to do my own hero's journey in them. And that is included in, or for the longest time, with the spirit or the fire element there, where I just recently came up with this realization that, wow, so just as I need to go to the gym and eat and rest in order for my body to feel happy, why wouldn't I have to push myself a little bit, use some of that effort, that willpower, or that discipline, or cultivating the spirit. Okay, so but for I guess when I today have been talking about most people, I probably include like everyone, and we have a lot of people who claim that they are non-spiritual, which is debatable. Really, I mean, let's not go into that now, but it is more of a philosophical deep dive thing for others, or me and my friend on our podcast. But in short, what I mean is that, like, if we connect, or if we see that the equal sign between spirituality and alignment towards your highest values or truths, that is something everyone has, no matter what they believe, because that is just something we do. We have values, no matter if we understand it or not. For example, it is probably true that everyone is deep down doing everything just because they think it will give them happiness. And if you have that as the highest value of happiness, then that is sort of your spirituality, one could say. And like Gandhi, like he's saying, my religion is simple, it is kindness. My religion is kind of similar, which is love, and which comes from kindness, and is sort of the same thing, and is most of all an action, which brings me to sort of the point that, okay, I have walked around believing that spirituality is something that you just experience, you don't really do anything, you just collect spiritual experiences, and I don't know what you do with that, sort of try to rationalize them or make sense of them intellectually, where really you are just working out your mind, the air element, but the fire, okay, come on. So I guess it took some understanding intellectually for me to be able to make sense of this, like aligning myself mentally with what I want to align with totally. What is my highest truth, my highest values. And like I said, that is love, and I've done videos on why the heart is a path. I will put a link in the description, and also a little point there so that you can click it if you want. But I go over there how really it is the only thing that matters in the end. I mean, you cannot say that just one thing matters in the world of a totality where the details are in the whole, but hierarchically that is on top, where experientially and logically nothing else can compare to feeling sort of this well-wishing highest love vibration and living in that and giving it to others as much as possible and creating from that. And that makes me think of another video that I made about the sample bank principle that I could also put on a little point there maybe, where I talk about how you can use what you value the most in your experiences and memories and sort of create from that. But anyways, so I realized recently that, or I put more words to it more precisely, because I realized for a while now that this is my highest values and truths, but more so lately on how, like, the cultivating part of it, the part in the practice, rest and nutrition steps of thriving. So I mean, I'm probably not alone in this, where, well, it can look like that, I guess, when I compare myself to, at first glance, religious practitioners who at least they go to church, they pray, but really when they say to follow Jesus, for most Christians that I've talked to, it's more about sort of accepting what he says, that it's the superior path, and then do your best without any pressure, almost. And like, it often becomes just like in the air element, where formal educational line is to just regurgitating and copying what prior authorities said is the correct way to think and be. And it really, many times I've noticed, or I've discussed this and thought about this, correct me if I'm wrong, you who listen, but people really don't really align with, like, jump into Jesus' practices. However much you adore what is said about him, I think many don't really believe that they can be Jesus, because that is, we have a word for that, like Jesus complex maybe, even, which is making fun of the whole trying of it. And there's a problem with seeing him as God. I'm not like trying to pick a fight here, but I'm just saying that it, as a result, that can make it so that people who believe it like that don't even understand that you can jump into your heart, like probably Jesus did and other masters, and live from there. So that it's really possible to have this love active in your life. And I know that in Christianity, for example, in some areas it's a problem, in my opinion, that they sort of mix together the heart with emotions, and they are putting that sort of into the box of listening to emotions, and listening to the heart is listening to the emotion, which can be manipulated by Satan. So just follow the Bible, which really separates you from the actual path, in my opinion, at least in my opinion and my experience of, if I compare it to my understanding of God or my highest truth of love and my experiences of it. And so people really just, I guess, align with the deepest divine of themselves, divine parts of themselves, just at random events that just occurs to you, where you accidentally need to help someone, a stranger or someone close, or be there for someone, or when you experience a loss at funerals and celebrations at marriages. Yes, so you really don't take responsibility, I would argue, there either. But let's take it back to myself, and where I have practiced for periods, and I've seen the truth appear again, like with popping into my heart field, and just really experience relationships getting better in reality, like I talk about more in other videos. Yeah, there's so many palpable benefits that I've noticed in this practice, and when I emphasize practice, it is not random, because I learned that I could take it into my own hands. Like in the beginning, it was random spiritual experiences of meeting people, just helping or just experiencing stuff through random stuff. I talk more about that in my heart path video. So we are on the exercise part here of the fourth element, and so just I should mention the rest part of it, how we rest usually in society. If you just subscribe, that holidays, we have those where we sort of unite and celebrate the unity of things with gathering with family, and people look up maybe to the sky or whatever they believe in, or look within a little bit more. But it's just 4 times a year or something. And then people have this subconscious practice of it through sports. Really, sports can be a spiritual rest, where you just feel connected with your team and you just let go, and it's also emotional rest and mental rest. And I haven't mentioned, but when we speak about the 4 elements and the balance, they leap into each other, and it's very, very intertwined. So it's just for the ease of the intellectuality here to pull them apart, to dissect and understand them on its own in the beginning. But then it's really about, with anything, when you have done that, is to then again put them together again and see the connections and see how it connects with other things in life. But how we spiritually rest when we take responsibility and like sort of have this regular spiritual rest, what does that mean? Well, a pointer for that you need it is that you feel disconnected from what matters to you. Life feels empty or directionless. You're going through the motions without feeling grounded. You feel cut off from something bigger, whether that's faith, nature, values, or community. So what play can be something you need to implement regular into your life. I would argue just for this sake as well, where you sort of align with this childish innocence, where you can enter the kingdom of heaven according to Jesus, according to someone. So don't quote me on that, but I heard that recently as a quote from him. But then also time in nature, prayer, meditation, reflection, and those are sort of spiritual practices that I will get to as a final point after just finishing this analogy. But also connecting with your values again and feeling part of something meaningful. Spirituality is really sort of this higher thing, because it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's easy to understand how God is that, because they say that it connects to everything. But love is also understandable, because really, I mean, once you've experienced it, you can sort of this universal love, you can really see that it is one heart. It is not just something that weed smoking reggae musicians have made up, but it's one heart, and that is very connective, and you can see that clearly then. But also, yeah, happiness as well. I mean, if that is your religion, everyone wants that. Even the bad people, they try to be happy, even though they suck at it, because you won't be happy when you hurt people. But then also acts of compassion and gratitude, which also points to my sort of wrapping up here of how to feel connected again. Or how to feel connected again is sort of the fourth element, spiritual nutrition thing. And also something else that can be spiritually, nutritionally, or nurturing, in my opinion, is this thing of synchronicity. It's sort of like a feedback from the universe that you are on the right path. Sort of when you, I guess in a New Age community, start to see angel numbers, sort of this 555, 111, and those triple numbers. Or when you think about something and then someone comes and talk about that precise thing randomly, that is synchronicity, and that can feel rewarding, which brings contentment, and and all of the happiness emotions are really nurturing, actually, giving rest also. Rest is very nurturing, of course. But yeah, when you take responsibility, I think on this fourth one, to make it stand out, because it does in this video, I will begin with the nutrition again. I will go work myself backwards to the practice as the last one. So on the nurturing, like, in my opinion, what I want to do now for myself so much more regular than just random events is because the random events part of this is that I've just, when I think of sort of these spiritual or soul connection meetings that I have with random people or new people that really gets me and I get them, that has been very rare, and it sort of felt like randomness, and it kind of is. But I mean, if I can notice what actually those connection does, and those that I have in my life also, it's not just with strangers that this happens, but I've sort of started to take and make it a routine to connect with my own soul through journaling, but also connect with others and my own soul and their soul by deep conversation regularly, like daily, preferably. Sort of when you just talk about your deepest desires and your deepest fears and complaints and pains, and you work it through together, and the other one listens, or you listen and don't try to change anything before the other one is ready and has felt it through, which is a key on the emotional part. But you just feel this with some people, that you are reminded of who you really are when you meet them, and don't leave that to randomness, is my opinion and newfound insight. I sort of blend this with the spiritual rest. But so yeah, let's get to the takeaway of this, where the practice, I want to end on the point that I realized where I need to take responsibility in my practice of spirituality, and how does that work? I did a little video on third pointer here on the screen on one way of practicing this thing that I'm talking about, the heart. That is for me the most purposeful, meaningful thing to cultivate, about compassion, how to cultivate compassion, how to turn negative situations, painful situation of suffering into a filled heart without pushing away feelings. That is useful. But then any Brahma Viharas, which are the Buddhist pathways of cultivating the hearts, or the heart, where you learn to turn any situation into a filled heart, really, no matter circumstances. It's a really powerful promise, and I've experimented with them a bit, and it's powerful, honestly. So why haven't I practiced that? And this is the pointer here, because I haven't seen it as an equally important part of my existence as my psyche, emotions, and physical. But now I understand that if I don't want to end up mediocre in that as well, whereas that is sort of waiting for the afterlife, and just don't think any higher than that, an inability to reach your morals throughout this life, really. That is not something I will anymore subscribe to. So what does it take? It takes just the same as for anything else here that I've gone over with, it takes exercise, it takes rest, it takes nutrition. So put it up as your habits and goals. Or if you don't run by that, put it as your intention. That's what I'm telling myself now, and I'm gonna act on it, and I am acting on it. And in fact, it has led to probably my next video, or we will see when I have worked it through completely. But I have a growing insight in me that I have just recently started to write down stuff about self-love. It's such a cliche, and it's been such a cliche for me. And it's when cultivating the heart through the Brahma Viharas and those meditation technique, I finally found it really much easier to go the other way first and sort of grow the heart that way. And what I mean by that is go and send love and feel love for the world or other people, which can be challenging as well, of course. And it takes practice, that too, for sure, and not make it random. But I found it super hard to put it to myself. Prior to this insight, it's been increasingly easy to feel compassion towards my situation, big or small, because we all go through suffering, big or small, and it's been kind of nice in that way to be able to access that increasingly. But I won't spill the beans too much here on this. I will keep it to the next video, but in essence it's about this insight of kindness to myself, of that I sort of bring memories of those nuggets from the sample bank of mine, where I have sort of been in the state of, oh my God, life is about kindness and happiness, and I don't want anything else right now than to make this person happy. And that sort of love, and sort of turn that into yourself or onto yourself, and and realize that this is like with any of these spiritual realizations, it often appears as, and I think it is the truth, that this is the default, this is what has been there all along, but we have covered it with, or we haven't been able to see it. So that is something I finally can have as a constant practice, because it doesn't take any energy to just notice that I am really wishing the absolute best for me and others. But many agree upon that in these types of spiritual practice communities and histories, that love really starts with yourself. And this is funny to me, because when I think Jesus said that love your neighbor as you love yourself, he took for granted that everyone loves themselves, or are aware of that they love themselves. But that is not the case, I would say. So when people love others like they love themselves, that is probably what's happening in a lot of situations today. And it's not a pretty picture, because people have a lot of lack of understanding that they love themselves, and they sort of put mental hate on themselves many times in their actions of any suppressing of you. It's a too long list. I get an error of trying to name a few of how we are hard on ourselves, and too hard. Conclusion is that I have grown up, which is equals taking self-responsibility and not leaving it to dad. You can still listen to dad and respect him, that you should, but you need to become your own man. If I'm not talking about women here, but it's vice versa, through taking responsibility in all of me, not just parts of me. And I guess now, just for fun, playing with the fifth element, whereas some people call that as sort of the soul, higher self, or awareness above everything, we're taking responsibility in that, or not taking it first, would look like just believing that, I have a soul, yeah, I am consciousness, but not thinking that you can or need to cultivate that. And I see the split that I've experienced in meditation is that it's sort of annoying sometimes, whereas I thought that cultivating mind or spirit through meditation, it would be nice to just have one meditation that can do that. And probably there is, but takes some advanced level of first separating the parts and then putting them together, like I said, for understanding anything. So it's part working on the awareness. That was first step for me to, I guess, in meditation, to just be able to observe everything, that there's a good foundation. So that would correspond to sort of this fifth element then, this awareness. I'm cultivating my awareness here, and I'm remembering that I am a soul constantly is a goal and a virtue. Virtue is such a watched out term, but anyways, me and my friend is probably next time on the podcast gonna talk about morality or responsibility or break that down. My friend had a very interesting take on how morality is not really about what he means with it. It's not really about following rules that someone put to you in order to not feel shame, but it's more so just following how the universe works in order to not get punished by reality, how the universal laws work. But anyways, so the other part of meditation is the for me the heart part of my aligning with my highest values in this life, which is more aligned with the will, with the fire, with actually doing something and aligning yourself with your values constantly, or as much as possible, regularly, just like the other elements, with rest and nutrition. So yeah, I like that the sort of distinction of the two types of spiritualities, whereas the one is the first, or the fifth is sort of just this, I am infinite, I just observe really, or I don't know, experience. But then there's this most meaningful thing is this, the heart, and this is what I wanna create from and make more of. And I kind of forget to just emphasizing what I also, like what it means, except for this thing that I will talk more about next video, about self-love and kindness. But it's a lot about also sitting, like doing the practice, sitting on the cushion or the chair or whatever you do your spiritual practice that takes you into alignment. Just like going to the gym, it can feel a little bit icky in the beginning, like, I'm uncomfortable, and am I wasting time? Am I pretentious? Am I trying? Am I doing this for vanity? Am I doing this in the fear of being a bad person? No, that is the old way of not understanding what spirituality is about. It is about aligning with what you truly, truly, truly desire, and like deep down in your heart, and really have there inside of you waiting for you to make the most use of. It's just like your body is sort of, if you don't take care of it, it is still waiting there for you to do it. Once you start to do that, it will start to become really happy with you, give you all sorts of good emotions and clear thinking. And I just wanted to add that because it's important. It all takes a little bit of grit, a little bit of pushing, like gassing, and a little bit of braking in life. You can't just choose one. Just never push yourself or always push yourself, I actually forgot one more thing, I think. But I had talked about this before, but I needed to add this because it's not obvious, I think, that the next step, it doesn't stop there at the meditation chair, of course. I mean, that is an arena for cultivating the base and like constantly increase your baseline of how you can grow your heart. But then you take it into your life more and more, to the day situations. I guess I said it a little bit through the practice that I have now towards myself, but ultimately you want to be able, like the maximum level is to be able to walk around and have any situation and sort of be aligned with your highest value and be in that reality where you're in your heart, so to speak, operating through that, and it shows in your actions towards people. I guess what I'm talking about here is sort of a lightened state, but that's really ultimately where it's leading if you cultivate the heart path in my case, but any spirituality, I think. And if you have different spirituality, I mean, you can do the math yourself in what it means for you to put down the effort and the responsibility and grow up and align yourself with your highest values, meaning, and wishes, That's it. Okay, bye.